Good evening, everybody on YouTube. Hope you are well. We are just getting set now for the Last Row podcast, so bear with me. And welcome in, everybody, to the Last Row podcast, a fan's perspective on sports. It's Brian here inside the ARM Media Solutions studio on this Friday, the 13th of March, 2026. Hope you are well. Hope you are happy wherever it is you may be listening. Big thanks to our friends over at I Know a Guy Remodeling and Forever Finds Thrift for their continued support of the show. We do appreciate them and each and every one of you that listen, whether that is on Apple Podcasts or through Spotify. We do appreciate that. Our friends over on YouTube Live, thank you so much for joining us. We do appreciate each and every one of you. My goodness, what a day. What a day of basketball. What a day of news, really, in terms of NFL news. And we're going to start there tonight because there's quite a bit that has happened here today, including a actually two major stories, really, that I wanted to get to. The first one has to deal with the Chicago Bears. And the Chicago Bears, you know what? I haven't even said hello to the folks on TikTok and given out our socials. Shame on me. I just wanted to get right into everything. You can follow us on our website, www.lastrowpodcast.com. There you can find links to our socials, including our X or Twitter page at Last Row Podcast. You can also follow us on TikTok at last.row.podcast. Make sure you are doing so. If you want to join us on TikTok Live, you can do so. Help join the chat, drive the show, as all of those wonderful friends of ours do each and every single night that we are live and in living color, coast to coast and around the world, sea to shining sea. All right, let's talk here about the Chicago Bears and the report that came out, and I actually think it was yesterday, to be completely honest with you. And we just didn't get to it last night, and honestly, shame on me. But I want to talk about it because it's a big deal. Adam Schefter yesterday afternoon or yesterday morning talked about the Chicago Bears in not a good light. And it came when talking about the pursuit of Max Crosby. And the Max Crosby pursuit that Chicago is in, they asked him point blank, will the Bears be in on Max Crosby? And he said, probably not. And they said, why? And he said, quote, the Chicago Bears are broke. And that story gained some pretty heavy traction throughout the day. And as things continued to evolve, it got picked up more and more. And it's becoming a major story now. And with that comes the scrutiny of Adam Schefter saying that. But then number two, the other part of it, and where I want to focus, is that realistically, he's not wrong. The Chicago Bears do not have any other income. We've talked about this for multiple times here on this show. And it's all because of what they have to spend coming up on the new stadium. And you've noticed that since the legislatures, both in Indiana and Illinois, have been on break, you haven't heard a peep out of Halas Hall. Unless if it's talking about different potential signings, different potential players, players that are leaving, so on and so forth. And so, with that comes my thought. And Adam Schefter is not wrong, okay? Let's put that out there right now. Adam Schefter is not wrong, and it's becoming more and more clear that more and more people are getting to the point that they're understanding just how bad this situation is with Chicago. And Schefter flat out said that the Chicago Bears are broke. And again, he's not wrong. And the reason why I say that is because they have no other source of income in the McCaskies. Okay? So the Chicago Bears are their baby. That's it. That's what they have. And they have no stadium at this point that they can call their own. They don't even own Soldier Field. They lease, for lack of a better term, Soldier Field or rent it from the Chicago Park District from, say, August until February or January, whenever they're done playing with their season. And I do apologize if there is a lag here or delays. We have incredible winds up here in northern Illinois. Internet's been knocked out. Power's been knocked out. That's why we've been a little bit later getting here tonight, but be that as it may. Just so you guys are aware. But with that, the Bears do not have any other income. The McCaskies don't have any other income. So they are ready, willing, and able to spend money, but only where they want to, which is with their stadium, and more than likely with Caleb Williams. And that's why the Bears aren't going all in on Max Crosby at this point. That's why the Bears aren't making any type of big-named signings. That's why the Bears are acting more and more like a small market team right now, because of what Adam Schefter just said. They don't have money. And it's pretty pathetic when a major market team does not have money. And when the major market team doesn't act like a major market team. And this gets me to my point of where I was going with all of this. And I'm sorry if this upsets Bears fans. And I'm sorry if it upsets anybody listening in the Chicago area that might be a relative of the McCaskies or anything, or know them personally. But here's what I will tell you. If the McCaskies don't have the money to sign free agents, get the hell out of the football business finally. Sell the team to somebody that's going to spend like a big market owner, somebody that's not going to dilly-dally around in figuring out where they want the stadium, whether it's Northwest Indiana, whether it's Arlington Heights, whether it's Chicago, wherever. Figure out what you want to do, because the ultimate part of this here is you are absolutely acting like a small market team in the third biggest market in the nation. And you finally have a window open to win potentially a Super Bowl. And you can't address needs because you don't have money. Because you have spent money on other things like Arlington Heights, like, whatever else. And you now have a major decision to make here in the next 2 years. Do you extend Caleb Williams? I think the overall answer, of course, is yes. But the bigger issue here is what happens when it's time to pony up money for Caleb. You simply cannot lowball the man. You have to pay him what he's worth. Otherwise, you will lose the best quarterback you've ever had. Now, I don't believe that will happen. But unless things start moving quickly for the Bears, and either they sell the franchise, which they won't, they never will. The McCaskies never will do that. They figure out what the hell's going on with the stadium, and they either sell the land in Arlington Heights or they, for lack of a better term, crap or get off the pot and say, yes, Northwest Indiana, we're coming there. We're putting shovels in the ground this April, and we're building the stadium. It'll open in 2030. Until that happens, they're going to have to rely on hitting on every pick in the draft because that's going to be the only way that this team gets better on the defensive side. Now, look, I will say this. To all the Bears fans, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday on the show, to all of the Bears fans that are upset about losing, Kevin Byard and Nashawn Wright and Jonathan Owens, who signed with the Colts earlier today. And you know what, Robbie? If he's as good as advertised, he should get that. If he's the savior of the team, like everybody says he is, with Ben Johnson, if they have another top 5 offense this year, there's no reason. Look, his value is only going to go higher. So they would be smart to sign him to a monster deal probably after next year, realistically. But in saying that, you have to hit on draft picks. And you have to be willing to draft, develop, and again, you have a window now of opportunity. And if you don't have that, if that window all of a sudden slams shut and you don't have it, then that's a problem. And whether you restructure guys, which you haven't done yet, and a lot of people are wondering why, me being one of them. Now, and Robbie, we were just getting to that. The defensive backs that they lost this year to free agency, other players that they lost to free agency, there's a reason why the Bears lost them to free agency. It's because they didn't want to sign them because that defense was bad. That defense statistically, and we talked about it last night, they were ranked 29th out of 32. You need a new secondary. You need new linebackers. You need a new defensive line. And maybe, just maybe, the fact that you have the 25th pick, that realistically you could trade back and get more picks. Look, you need all the picks you can get at this point. You absolutely need to have all of the picks you can get. And if you don't, that's a big problem. And if you don't hit on the players, that's an even bigger problem. And realistically here, let's just call it what it is. This may be Ryan Poles. It has to be his best draft. It has to be. There's no other way to put it other than he has to hit on every pick. And I don't think it's trying to be the smartest guy in the room. I think you take the best player available at whatever position of need that you have. And if you don't and you try to be the smartest guy in the room, you're going to find out very quickly that you're going to be out of a job. And you're going to make Ben Johnson's life a living hell trying to coach up players that aren't up to NFL standards. And for the Chicago Bears, you have to be able to draft and develop. And that's what got Ryan Pace fired. That's what got John Fox fired. That's what's gotten all the previous Bears coaches fired because they couldn't draft and develop. You look at teams that are able to draft and develop, they're never in the top 10 of the NFL draft. Why? Because they always have guys coming in through the pipeline the way it's supposed to be. If you hit on the quarterback and you hit on the coach, which it certainly seems like you're doing, guess what? Everything else falls into place as long as you hit on the draft picks. And if you don't hit on those draft picks, guess what? You'll be looking for a job. That's why I believe Ben Johnson has more player personnel control than what people are leading to believe or being led to believe. I believe Ben Johnson has more player personnel control than what anybody believes. And you lost your offensive coordinator, not a big loss, with Declan Doyle. The really good news is you kept the majority of your defensive staff, Al Harris, particularly, because he is a guy that, look, if Dennis Allen goes away next year or after next year, and Al Harris can get promoted to a defensive coordinator position, that is the best option possible because he connects with the defensive backs. Everywhere that he has coached, the defensive backs have been in the top half of the league in turnovers with interceptions and or forced fumbles. The Bears need that. The Bears have to have that because if the defensive line isn't improved because you don't have, Max Crosby or Myles Garrett or Jalen Carter, any of those mega players that are absolute studs, okay? You have to figure out exactly what's happening. You have to know that our coverage is going to be good enough. We're going to get turnovers. He absolutely is, Robbie. You're exactly right. And Antoine Randall being a phenomenal position coach, he absolutely is. There's no question. So for the Bears, they have got to understand that right away, picks 25, 57, 60, they've got to hit home runs on those first three picks. They absolutely have to. And if you have to mortgage next year's draft later in the later picks to get up into the fourth round and get multiple picks there to get better players, guess what? You have to. You don't have a choice at this point. You absolutely have to. And so for Chicago, there's no question that they have to absolutely make sure things are moving in the right direction. They have to. And if they don't, then you're going to see this team struggle next year and probably the next 2 years because they're not going to be able, because they're so cheap, they don't want to pay Caleb Williams that money. And if they don't pay Caleb Williams that money right away or don't sign him to a friendly contract, then guess what? The issue here is going to be, do you even keep Caleb Williams because you don't want to pay him? And for the Chicago Bears, if that happens by chance, you're going to have a lot of angry Bear fans. It doesn't matter where you build that stadium at. It does not matter one little bit where you build that stadium. I see that we do have some lag happening here on the stream. I appreciate everybody's patience. Like I said, we are dealing with 50 and 60 mile an hour winds up here in Illinois. So it has been wreaking havoc all day on internet, on phones, on everything. So, yeah. Anyway, Adam Schefter, kudos to him for having the intestinal fortitude, or guts, in other words, to call out the fact that the Bears are broke. And look, the McCaskies do not have money, as he said. The McCaskies don't have any other income outside of Chicago Bears football. And they have to be saving that money because they're not going to get any type of break, really, from the NFL. And especially when they say they're going to put $2 billion of their own money. Well, I can tell you what. If you don't have the opportunity to sign free agents because you're waiting for your stadium, guess what? You need to do a better job of marketing the brand. You need to do a better job of making money. And ultimately, you need to sell the team. Because if you don't have that liquid assets, as it's called, if you don't have the assets to do it, you shouldn't be doing it. And realistically, they have no money to sign big ticket free agents. That's why you're seeing a lot of these other players go other places because they might want to come to Chicago. But the problem is now you've got the coach, you've got the coaching staff, you've got the quarterback, you've got the dynamic offense. The problem is now you don't have the funds for it because they're putting away the checkbook, because they're realizing that they don't have the capital to get things started how it needs to be. And for Chicago, look, the Bears have been dying to have a winning program and a winning team since 2005. We'll just call it, okay? And Reagan, you're spot on. The window's now, and if you can't keep up with the Cronkies or the Joneses, who both have outside incomes, mind you, the McCaskies don't. Why that is, I have no idea. I don't know if it's because they just felt entitled because they owned the Chicago Bears. I don't know if they just felt like they don't need to do anything. But you know what? They need to do something because money's tight. And if you don't have the capital either for the stadium or for the free agents or to do anything like that, you have to do what you have to do to make the money. Whether that's selling stakes in the team, which they started doing a little bit of, but they don't want to give up any part of ownership because the older generation of the McCaskies, okay, the older generation, meaning George and his other brothers, their sons don't want anything to do with it as far as I know. And they don't want to sell to an outside person because they treat this as a family business. There is a guy named Pat Ryan that owns a portion of the Bears. But that is the only other person that I believe has a ownership stake in the Chicago Bears, and it's because the McCaskey family doesn't want to go outside of their family. And with that, the majority ownership are the McCaskies, okay? They own roughly 78%. The Ryan family owns approximately 22% of it. And George McCaskey being the team president, excuse me, I just get choked up about this, as you can tell. The McCaskies don't intend to sell the team. George has said that. It's structured like a family business rather than being like a corporate business, which is what it should be. And their value right now is at $8.9 billion. But you wouldn't know that by how cheap the owners are. And they've never once wanted to run the business like a private company. And that has been the biggest problem. Now, I'll tell you who ran it like a private company. George Halas. He knew where to go. He wanted to go to Arlington Heights back in the 70s because he knew that that was going to be a budding area in Illinois. And he didn't do it because he got told by the mayor of Chicago that if you leave the city, you will not be able to use the Chicago Bears name. And I will sue you for the name right. And George Halas said, okay, you know what? We're not going to do it. We're going to stay in Chicago, yada, yada, yada. And he felt that way till his dying day. He knew Arlington Heights was the better location. That's why they jumped so quickly when the Arlington Heights land came for sale, because Virginia's time was getting near, and she wanted to make her dad one last promise or one last wish come true of getting the Bears to the Arlington Heights area. And that's what they're doing now. But you wouldn't know that based upon how they're running and how the organization is being run by the grandson, by other family members. It's a joke. If I can put it nicely, it's a joke. everybody talks about how, the Arizona Cardinals or the Cleveland Browns, their ownership is always the worst in the league. Yes, from a player personnel standpoint, absolutely. In terms of a business, I would put the McCaskies right up there because they've held this amount since 1983. This 78%. Yet, do you see them really doing anything to help market the team or to help, do anything like that to maybe make things bigger and better for Caleb Williams? No, they're leaving their guys out to find their own deals to help market the team, and it's never worked out well for Chicago. It never has. And in the 80s, you had Jim McMahon and Mike Ditka and Walter Payton and all of these other guys making millions upon millions of dollars because they thought, as a private business, they thought, hey, my brand of Jim McMahon, my brand of Walter Payton, whatever it is going to be just that. It's my brand. It's how I perceive myself. It's how I market myself. And they made millions of dollars in the 80s. And they were able to capitalize on that. The McCaskies never did. The McCaskey family never did in terms of, capitalizing on the Super Bowl in 85, capitalizing on the popularity of their players to help market them, to help, build the brand. Like Pat McAfee says, it's for the brand, right? So the Bears have never done that. They've never run the organization like a business. They've run it like a family-owned company. And it's coming back now to bite them when they need to have it run like a private business. They don't want to sell. George said the McCaskies will never sell the Bears. I guarantee you, once their kids are the new owners, they will more than likely sell. But that's not going to be for another 25 years, realistically. And that may be the next time the Bears win the Super Bowl, is in 25 years, once the McCaskies are no longer involved. Because as long as the McCaskies are involved, and I'm saying this as a Bears fan, I do not believe they will win another Super Bowl with the McCaskies at the ownership. I just don't. Because I don't believe the McCaskies are going to spend the money needed to ensure that they are a Super Bowl contending team. The more and more I've thought about it over the last few days, and then hearing Adam Schefter yesterday morning call them out and say that they're broke. To say that about the third market team in the NFL, that's a pretty bold statement, but the sad part is it's true. And you haven't heard any type of rebuttal from the McCaskies. You haven't heard any type of rebuttal from Kevin Warren, the president, because there is no rebuttal. The truth, unfortunately, hurts. And for the Bears, that's a very, very, very big pill to swallow. And unfortunately, until they learn that, and until they learn that this has to be run like a private company, they will never win the Super Bowl. And that kills me to say that as a Bears fan, because I want nothing more than to win now with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, because that would be ideal. That would be perfect, where you win right now in the window, where you've got the rookie on the rookie contract. You win now, and you solidify all the money that you're going to make moving into a new stadium in Arlington Heights. Realistically, I don't think it's going to happen until they're gone. I just don't. And as fun as this year was, and it was great, and it gives Bears fans a sense of hope for once, what brings us back to reality, and we talked about it yesterday, the mindset of not having nice things, right? the reality is we'll never experience the Super Bowl more than likely because the McCaskies won't allow us to have nice things. That's why there hasn't been a stadium announcement yet. That's why they've botched this from the beginning. And until they solve the stadium issue, until they get shovels in the ground, it's always going to be, well, there go the Bears. They're Bearsing again. They're doing what the Bears do. They drop the ball when it comes to business decisions like this. And that's all on the McCaskies. It's all on the McCaskies. All right. We are going to take a quick timeout. We're going to hear from our friends over at I Know a Guy Remodeling. And then from there, we are going to talk about March Madness and what a day today was. And I will just tell you, I was screaming at my television within the last 2 hours with one of the games. We'll talk more about that and more as the Last Row podcast continues and rolls on. First, a word from I Know a Guy Remodeling. You know what separates contenders from pretenders? Off-season moves, smart investments, big upgrades, fixing weaknesses before the season starts. So let's talk about your house. That outdated kitchen, that's a defensive liability. The cramped bathroom, it's a cap space disaster. That unfinished basement, wasted potential. You can sit back and trust the process, or you can make a big splash signing with I Know a Guy Remodeling. They come in, they assess the roster, and build you a championship level space. No gimmicks, no drama, just professional, reliable results. This spring, make the move that changes everything. You can find a link to their Facebook page on our website, www.lastrowpodcast.com, because banners don't hang themselves, and everybody deserves to know a guy. And now, you do. I Know a Guy Remodeling. All right, we are back. Here on the Last Row podcast, a fan's perspective on sports. Welcome back, everybody. All right, let's talk here about the start of March Madness, which ultimately happens here on Sunday when Selection Sunday happens. However, some of the games that have been taking place here today have been absolutely fantastic. And we're going to talk about a few of them and get kind of perspectives on it, so on and so forth. Now, we're going to start with the we're going to start here with, we're just going to work our way through the schedule here from today. St. Joseph's over Davidson 70-58. Akron in the MAC over Kent State 75-68. Howard over South Carolina State 78-61. VCU in the Atlantic 10 quarterfinal game over Duquesne 71-66. Holy Toledo with a victory over UMass 77-67. Tulsa victorious over North Texas 90-84. Sam Houston loses to Kennesaw State 79-73. Dayton over St. Bonaventure. The Bonnies' run is over. Dayton with the victory today 68-63. Prairie View A&M over Alabama A&M 74-55. Charlotte over UAB 83-78. Louisiana Tech over Missouri State in the Conference USA Championship semifinals. St. Louis over George Washington 88-81. All right, now to some teams that we recognize. SEC tournament, the quarterfinals. Vanderbilt over Tennessee. That game earlier today, 75-68. Ole Miss with a 1-point win over Alabama. The Rebels continue their run in the SEC tournament. Just a shock to me. Just an absolute shock. Not even going to lie. All right. we continue on here with the scores. St. John's over Seton Hall, 78-68. Purdue, number 18, Purdue over number 11, Nebraska, 74-58. Nebraska could not shoot tonight at all. And give Purdue credit, they capitalized. Purdue looks good right now. It's about time. Virginia over Miami, 84-62. Florida over Kentucky, 71-63. Michigan over Ohio State in the Big Ten, 71-67. I'll be honest with you. Watching that game earlier today, I was not impressed with Michigan. I truly wasn't. I thought Ohio State had chances, and they just didn't hit big shots. And I think the moment got to them. I think Michigan played really, really, really tight. Michigan looked like the team that didn't that had too much to lose, and Ohio State was playing loose, was playing free. Kentucky absolutely has a Pope problem. You're right, Reagan. We've talked about that before. It's not up to Kentucky standards. Florida victorious over them. It's not up to Kentucky standards. That's why I think Pope might be in trouble. Ohio State looked very good today to me in a game where, let's be honest here, they shouldn't have been that close. Michigan has been ranked all year and has absolutely dominated most of the Big Ten season. They struggled today. And Michigan just did not look like Michigan. That's why I wonder if they've got enough to get through March. That's why I wonder. Speaking of getting through March, let's talk here for a moment about Wisconsin over Illinois in the Big Ten. And yeah, Bruce, you're right. Ole Miss is on a roll. Look, they're playing well. The Rebels are playing really, really well right now. And it's evident in how they're playing. They've got a lot of confidence. And when you give a team like that confidence, that's all they need. That's all they need. Let's talk about Wisconsin over Illinois. Wisconsin has a player that immediately, after the first 10 minutes of the game, I thought to myself, I really don't like that guy. And that is Nick Boyd, their guard. Just seems very, I'm just going to say it, brash, cocky. But give it up for Wisconsin because you know what? They were down big. And once again, Brad Underwood's team lacked that killer instinct to just step on the throat when they had them down, and they didn't do it. And Illinois let them back in the game twice, once in the first half and then in the second half. And when Illinois lost the lead late in the second half, I said that's ball game because they are not mentally tough enough to come back and get defensive stops. Look, I heard Frank Martin once say this in a press conference to a question that was asked by a young man who was actually writing for Sports Illustrated for Kids. And Frank Martin said, let me give you credit for asking that question. I've been doing this a long time. Nobody's asked me that question. And the question was, what is a bigger help on defense, attitude or technique? And Frank Martin, when he was at South Carolina, said, attitude starts first. It's got to be the attitude. You've got to have the right mindset. You have to be willing to play the right way. Technique we can teach. It's the attitude that's got to be there. You have to be willing to do it a certain way. At this point in time, Brad Underwood's team does not have the attitude. Yes, very much, Bruce. Very much. He's very much like Lute Olson. Yes, from the 90s. The problem is Lute Olson could get the most out of his talent. Brad Underwood's not right now. And what's really telling to me is there's footage on X I saw of Brad Underwood walking off the court, and he looked at the Illinois athletic director, and he said, "Sorry about that." And I went, "Whoa, wait a second. That doesn't sit right with me. There's something off there." And look, Brad Underwood can say all the things that he thinks are right. But the problem is, and here's the other part of it. Brad Underwood stated that, look, we've won a lot of close games. Really? Because when you were in a close game today in the Big Ten tournament against a team that was ranked underneath of you in the tournament, and a team that you haven't beaten in the last 3 games that you've played, they've owned you. And they have beaten you in overtime twice. And they made you look really, really, honestly, pathetic. Illinois didn't have an answer for Wisconsin's toughness. Illinois didn't have an answer for Wisconsin's speed. Illinois was relying way too much on the 3. This is just me, okay? And I'm just speaking as a fan, a basketball fan here. Illinois looked to be like the road team in this game, playing for the tie at the end of the game. Illinois was just looking to get themselves a tie. And look, Wagler didn't have a good game. He was 8 of 18 shooting, 19 points. He was 1 of 6 from the 3. Mirkovic, 19 points, 8 of 13 for Illinois. Nobody else really stepped up. Stojakovic with 17. Look, I'm sorry. Stojakovic should be starting, in my opinion. Stojakovic is a player that should be starting. And if Brad Underwood were a good enough coach, guess what? If he knew his personnel, KYP, Stojakovic would be starting at this point. But he's not. And why that is, I can't tell you. He's the son of Peja Stojakovic, who's a junior. He's 6'7", he's a guard, and yet he's not starting. Instead, you've got Boswell, who's a 6'2" senior, and doesn't really give you much. He gives you 13 points a game. There's just a lot that I like about Stojakovic's game. And the fact that Illinois looks like a mid-market team right now, when they are absolutely, they should be one of the, on paper, they're as good as there is in the USA. But the problem is, you couldn't stop Boyd or Blackwell, the backcourt for Wisconsin. Those two guys, Blackwell and Boyd, 76 points they accounted for. Or I'm sorry, no, check that. They were for 69 points of the 91 points. That's incredible. And honestly, Illinois couldn't stop anybody today. And it was evident. And it starts with the attitude, and the attitude has to come from the head coach. And if the head coach doesn't have it, then the AD at Illinois needs to make a decision. And I guarantee you this, if you had a coach in there, and I know I've used his name before, but I'm just invoking, what he did, Tom Thibodeau, and he had a very famous quote when he was the coach of the Bulls: "Do your job." Defense is all about attitude. You've got to want to stop the guy in front of you. And if you don't, you need to check your attitude. And that's why Illinois is going to get bounced early in the tournament. I'm telling you right now. If they get bounced in the round of 64, I'm telling you Brad Underwood will be gone. Brad Underwood will be let go, because that will be considered an embarrassment. Kansas is storming back against Houston. Houston has gone super cold, and Kansas is starting to heat up. Bruce, to your comment, Akron will win the MAC. Is that John Gross, the former Illini coach? Yeah, he'll win in the MAC because he's a really good head coach. But when the problem is Gross could not recruit in the Big Ten. He couldn't do it, and that's why he was run out of town real quick at Illinois. They were hoping to find the next Bruce Weber, and they didn't do it. Another guy that I forgot about prior to, and I think he was before. I don't remember if he was before Bill Self or if he was after. I think he was before. But Lon Kruger, the former coach of the Fighting Illini, I forgot how good of a coach he was. And he was at Illinois from 96 to 2000. And then I think Self came in after that, if I remember correct. But I was watching something and I saw Lon Kruger and I went, oh man, I forgot about that. And I think he was before Self was after that. Yeah, Kruger was before that. So Kansas has had it down to I think 4, and now it's back up to 6, and Houston's got the ball. This is going to be a great matchup. It's going to be a great matchup tonight. I'm really looking forward to the second half. I will tell you, the SEC has stated that they are getting rid of the glass court. Or no, excuse me, it's the Big 12. They're getting rid of the glass court in favor of going back to hardwood because players are saying that they're not a fan of the glass court. It's slippery, so on and so forth, which is fine. I'm all for it, but I believe they're keeping the design for it, which I'm all in favor of. I like the design for the Big 12. Then the other game in the Big 12 earlier on tonight that I was sitting on my couch, minding my business, watching the game. My son was playing, on our floor with his toys. The Arizona-Iowa State game. I'm going to tell you this right here and now. Iowa State's a good team. Iowa State is a very good team, and that would be a coach that I would look at for Illinois if they couldn't land, Tom Thibodeau or somebody like that. I would absolutely look at that coach from Iowa State. He's a very good coach. They played Arizona incredibly tough. That was a fantastic game. Big-time basketball, smart IQ basketball, just all the way around. And Arizona was lucky. That shot by Bradley at the end of the game was phenomenal. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. It was absolutely phenomenal. They have he knew right from the jump he was going to do everything he could to make that shot, and by God, he did. And look, Iowa State played phenomenal defense, absolutely phenomenal. At the half, Houston is up 33-25. You know what? I don't think so, and the reason why I say that, Monty, is I think the Big Ten has a little bit better exposure than the Big 12, especially being at Illinois. Not saying anything bad against Iowa State, but they've got to do. Illinois's got to make a big move. If Illinois gets bounced in the first round of the tournament, or even the second round, realistically, I don't think Underwood should be the coach anymore. I just don't. And it's not because I don't like him. He just doesn't have the killer instinct, the killer instinct for his team. And that attitude has to come from the coach. The coach has to preach it, has to teach it, has to do everything in order to get the team motivated. And right now, Brad Underwood doesn't have any answers. And when you're into March, that's a big problem. That's a very big problem. And I'll just say this. You've got some big games coming up yet tonight. But I don't know if anything will top that Iowa State game with Arizona. That was fantastic. Duke right now is all over Clemson, 41-22. Of course, we've got Houston over Kansas at the half. UConn all over Georgetown. UCLA over Michigan State currently. That lead is down to 8 with 10:26 to go in the second half. And I'm going to flip that game on right now on the Big Ten Network because, look, I like Tom Izzo. I truly do. I think Izzo he's got a knack for coaching big time in the in tournaments. Now, the player that obviously makes me nervous is their guard that he's like the Grayson Allen for Michigan State. UCLA, though, is playing out of their mind right now. And they're playing smart basketball, making the extra pass, three-point attempt, misses off the rim, rebound by Michigan State. And Ole Miss and Oklahoma are according to Lombardi, Oklahoma is I believe, the first 4 out. I think that Oklahoma's got to win the tournament. They have to win the Big 12 if they wanted a shot. And I don't know necessarily if they're going to be able to do that. They're up right now against Arkansas early in the first half in a close game. But again, Porter Moser has to be able to coach this team up and get them ready to go. Ole Miss right now being on a tear is big for the SEC. Now I just saw one of Izzo's big men take a three, and there's a TV timeout, and and Izzo pulled him aside and said, "What the bleep are you doing?" And I think it was Kohler, and and Izzo was not happy about it. Izzo was not happy about it. And I love that. I love that. I want my head coach fired up like that. And obviously, so far with the way things have gone in the respective tournaments, and somebody put on X earlier today that the Big Ten expanded its overall tournament for everybody, and yet here we sit with the top 8 seeds remaining. And it's like, yep, that's typical. That's typical. But I believe that overall the Big Ten tournament is shaping up really, really nicely. I'm really impressed with Kansas. Really impressed with Arizona. Iowa State to me is really, really good. Michigan is a little, I know I go against the grain there, but there's something about Michigan I don't like. I don't know if it's how they play. I don't know if it's their tempo. There's just something about it that just doesn't sit right with me. But they're going to be there at the end. They're going to be one of the teams that I think is certainly at least in the Sweet 16, I would think. But it all depends on the draw on Sunday night. It all depends on that draw. And look, we're going to be here Sunday night to go over it. We're going to be here to talk about it. We're going to be here tomorrow night to recap tomorrow night's games and hopefully not have 12 inches of snow on the ground between this weekend and early next week. So my hope is that we're talking about an NCAA tournament field on Sunday night that everybody can be happy with, that there isn't anybody that feels they got, jobbed over or, the seating wasn't fair, so on and so forth. I still think Miami of Ohio is going to get in. I still think they will. But we'll have to see. We're going to have to see what happens. But Monty, I think your point though about the bubble teams are getting nervous because of how Ole Miss is playing, how Oklahoma's playing. I agree with you. I agree wholeheartedly with you, and I think that it's making a big it's making a big statement that because of the NIL, they're showing the replay. They're showing the replay. They're showing the replay of Izzo going after Kohler, and Izzo screamed at him, and Kohler screamed right back and said that wasn't my guy. So I love it. Listen, I love Tom Izzo. I think Izzo is just a phenomenal head coach, and I've always thought that when Phil Jackson left the Bulls, and there was rumors of them talking to potentially Izzo and or Tim Floyd, I said, "Give me Izzo, please give me Izzo," and they didn't. And now if they get rid of Billy Donovan, you know who I want to be the next coach of the Bulls? Two guys: Tom Thibodeau or Danny Hurley from UConn. I don't think either one of them will happen, but it's worth a shot. It's worth a shot in my eyes. So we've got big games on scheduled for tomorrow. Let's go ahead and run through those as we get you set for championship weekend, which I am excited about and ready to go. And, of course, we've got all kinds of action coming up over the next few days. And look, Cincinnati fired their head coach. The MAC commissioner says they want two teams, and he predicts they're going to get two teams in the tournament. I'm truly hopeful that we get just some great games here this weekend. Truly I am. And if that happens starting tomorrow, we're going to have ourselves a really fun Saturday and Sunday. You've got Wisconsin against Michigan, Vanderbilt against Florida. You've got Purdue waiting to see who they're going to play. Tulsa is in action. Arizona's in action. Lots of games tomorrow. And then, obviously, the championships on Sunday. And then, of course, you have Selection Sunday. And that's what we're looking forward to. That's what's happening. And I am excited about it. And I hope you are, too, as we gear up for some of the best coming weeks. Hey there, Mr. First Down. How are you, sir? Good to see you. And, yeah, Monty, I've been monitoring the game, the U.S. game. It's a little too close for comfort for me against Team Canada. I'm not going to lie. USA has, again, they've got too much talent, and there's not enough. There's just not enough oomph behind it. And they had Paul Skeens on the mound tonight. I believe Skeens was on the mound tonight. Or maybe he's pitching if they win against the Dominican on Sunday. But again, Bobby Witt Jr. leading off 0 for 3. Harper 0 for 4. Kyle Schwarber 1 for 4. Bregman 1 for 4. Pete Crow Armstrong right now has been their best hitter. He's 2 for 3. Logan Webb was tonight. Thank you. Schwarber with an RBI. Bregman with an RBI. PCA with an RBI. Terang with an RBI. Look, I'm sorry, but Bobby Witt Jr., for as great as he is on defense, Bobby Witt Jr. should not be leading off. Your best leadoff hitter is your designated hitter in Kyle Schwarber. He looks at the most pitches. He makes really good contact. Monty, I think it's because I think DeRosa wants speed at the bottom of the lineup. I truthfully believe that. I think he wants speed at the beginning of the lineup, or at the bottom of the lineup. I don't believe that PCA is a leadoff hitter by any means. I don't believe so. But I'll say this much. By putting him at the bottom of the lineup, that puts more pressure, I think, on the pitcher and on the defense, because you got to have guys that can get on base and make things a little hectic. And for that, that's why I think he's at the bottom of the order. But the way he's hitting right now, you could argue that he needs to be up higher in the order. Roman Anthony, 1 for 4. Buxton, not really doing much. Cal Raleigh, not doing anything. 0 for 2. Turang, 2 for 3. You've got to have speed, Mr. First Down. You know that. Speed throughout. And right now, Turang has got 2 singles and an RBI. You got to do something, DeRosa. You've got to do something. Yeah, but you know what? Lego. I really feel that Witt should not be the leadoff hitter, though. I mean, he's not doing anything. He hasn't produced. Schwarber is at least out hitting him, and it's not even close. And guys, if you haven't checked out Mr. First Down, do me a favor, make sure you do so. Great podcast, phenomenal guy. He knows so much about the Tennessee Titans, so much about the Tennessee Volunteers and sports down in Tennessee. Make sure you follow him. He's got a great podcast. Make sure you check him out. Phenomenal. Top of 9, 3-1 count, 5-3 USA. If I'm right now, I gotta get a couple extra runs here. I gotta at least try to get one. Give me something to get a little bit more comfortable, because my feeling right now is that the U.S. doesn't have enough to make me feel like they're going to do anything. And I don't know why DeRosa, and quite honestly, DeRosa is he's managing the game very similarly to David Ross, how David Ross liked to manage games for the Cubs, and that's not a good thing. PCA hits into a double play. Well, there goes all the love for PCA that I had. But ultimately, look, the U.S. got to win tonight. Got to win here tonight. No doubt about it. All right. That's going to put a bow on this edition of the Last Row Podcast. Make sure you stick around if you're on TikTok Live for the overtime. We'll be back with you tomorrow night. Big thanks to Forever Finds Thrift and I Know a Guy Remodeling. We appreciate their support. Appreciate you, the listeners, for continuing to stick around with us night after night for all of these subscriptions and the ratings. We will be back with you, as stated, tomorrow night when breaking news changes everything. And until tomorrow night, I'll see you in the last row.